Greetings and God bless. I just wanted to share a thought I had about the high cost of living that we have now and people's wages not meeting the demands. And of course, this conspicuous consumption, this programming that we're all supposed to look like a famous rich person like the Kardashians or something like that. I think it just dawned on me that this is all to control people to so the wages are not meeting the cost of rent because rent like cost of living I read somewhere is like 160% higher than it was in the 70s, and it doesn't, wages haven't kept up with the cost of living. And the people who are overcharging on rent or purchasing a house or utilities or whatever, they're all saying, well, it's all expensive. We have these higher expenses. Everything costs more now. Somehow, um, and I am wondering if it's some sort of engineered mass control kind of a thing. So, because people are, they're expected to work two jobs or something like that, have some sort of side job, do some moonlighting. Now it's called this hustle. When I was a kid, hustle meant something to do with prostitution and stuff like that. And now, like, people, like Christians, are talking about like this, using that term. In the 80s, 70s, it was called moonlighting. And bosses didn't like you moonlighting because when people were working two jobs, they couldn't focus. They weren't functioning. They weren't good workers. And somebody in my family, they were moonlighting, and they had to keep it quiet. They couldn't let their other boss know. But now it's expected, that you have multiple income streams. That's another, term for it now. Like now, your regular job does not help you buy your house and pay your food bill and stuff like that. Now you have to have multiple income streams, seven job, seven different income streams until you make $1 million and stuff like that. It's like it's such pressure, and it's dehumanizing because 100 years ago people were content being a farmer or being a shopkeeper or being like a housekeeper or a veterinarian or something like that. But like now we have this comparison with like the richest and the most extreme, and we're trying to live like them. And then we're expecting everybody else to live like some Kardashian, you know, kind of a person. And it's just it's devolved our civilization. And but anyways, outside of that, I think that this economic pressure of things being so expensive, and then also being brainwashed that you have to live like the rich and famous. It's a type of control. Because when I was a kid, we didn't eat out like maybe once every few years or something like that. We'd get Chinese food or pizza pie or something like that. We very, maybe something at the restaurant, but seriously, like it wasn't regular. Like it was maybe once a year or something like that. And yeah, I did grow up in privation, but my fellow classmates weren't. Their family wasn't going out for Chinese food every night. Uh, like and I did get pizza, or I did get Chinese food during the day at school if I hadn't brought my lunch or something like that. And then if I had money and I had to scrimp and save to have that money to buy that egg roll or something like that. But like now, like people are spending $7 on their coffee every day or something like that, and this is like normal. When I was growing up, people were not spending $7 on their coffee. They weren't even spending $7 on their breakfast. If they did eat out, it was like 50 cents, I think, for a coffee or something cheaper. So we're in this crazy paradigm, and like stop it, folks. Stop trying to be flashy and fancy and fabulous. Like, and I wonder if part of this whole alphabet thing, everybody coloring their hair green and putting on this crazy makeup and chopping up their nether regions. Like 100 years ago, who would those people be? They would not be doing that. Like they would have been, I mean, because we have all these chemicals, we have all these medical procedures, we have all this brainwashing that's affecting people's biology, their DNA, their psychology. And so it's affecting the weakest part of them. And so they're behaving this way. But if it was 100 years ago and there wasn't all this propaganda and subliminal programming and poisons everywhere, uh, like just look at old time movies or, books from the 1800s. There were not um, the extremes that we have today of like ordinary people. Like ordinary people, yeah, they had their issues. They were doing, they did bad things too, but like nothing like it's today. Like today, like we have just jumped the shark as humanity, as civilization, as a culture. We're just so messed up. And I think like if we didn't have like this, so we're competing for resources, we're competing for housing. There's not enough housing for people to live. There's not enough good mates for people to have a relationship with. There's not enough like healthy family, healthy interpersonal behavior for us to be around. People are just doing drugs and getting drunk and immersing themselves in social media and technology and video games and stuff like that as a replacement for the requirements of being a human being. And there's not enough people having access to nature. Like that's a big elephant in the room that even the talking heads aren't really, they're not really thinking about. But I grew up in New York City, and as a kid, we just, went home to our box and then, walked on the concrete, dirty street to the school, getting cooked by fluorescent lights and having to breathe in the fumes from the cleaning products and breathing in the bad air and eating crappy food, and then going back to the box and sleeping in a moldy space. Like that's and like my parents were working class, like uh and even the people living in my building who were, had their parents made more money or something like that. Like we were living in a box. We weren't going to the park every day or going to the country once a month or something like that. Some kids were. Some kids did go skiing and stuff like that, but like there wasn't a culture of go enjoy the park. And partly the reason why is because it was kind of dangerous. Like there was just like some bad behavior, and also everybody's dog was pooping, so you couldn't sit on the grass. Like so it was just really, it was a challenge. It was a challenge, especially with just different responsibilities and little children and stuff in the family. Just getting that all coordinated to go to a park, and then all the dog poop there, or violent children there. Parents not taking care, gangs of children, because that's something that my family encountered. And these were white kids that were attacking me and my older sister, my family, my mom, at the park. So there's people who like to do race baiting, but white people have been bullying other white people, and white people have been ganging up on other white people, and I don't know what that's about. I think it's maybe demonic or something like that. And it's really troubling when you're a good little kid and your family's good people, and you're targeted by children, and like nobody helped us. But anyway, So that was really traumatic for our family because, it affected my parents. But anyway, and that was in the 70s. People are trying to say, oh, certain demographics are harming this country or whatever. I'm talking about white people in the 70s were bullying white people in the 70s. Like those kids who were ganging up on us were white kids. Their parents weren't doing anything and these were white girls. This was a gang of white girls. Um, so that was in the 70s. And, I think it was in the 80s. There was the Bernard Goetz vigilante thing. And people were mad at Bernard Goetz for defending himself against 4 black assailants. They sued him, like he got put in jail. So the crazy dynamic that we're seeing today in 2024 was going on in the 70s and 80s in New York City, and white people against white people. So yeah, like people are trying to do some sort of race thing. I think it's actually classism. I think when you're insulated by a lot of money, it protects you because if you're rich and you have your own estate or whatever and you're paying people's wages, like, those people's kids are not going to have their dogs poop on your lawn. Like like I think the whole problem is it comes down to money. And when you're working class, and I think like the working class have the worst of it, in my opinion, because like the working class are supposed to work, they're supposed to pay the taxes, they're supposed to carry the burden of the impoverished, of those who are getting welfare, getting Section 8. And the working class is also bearing the burden of taxes because the rich have all their loopholes. They've got all their little tax shelters and stuff, so they don't have to pay taxes. And they have accountants who will do all the finagling. And the working class are just so busy and they're so burnt out, they can't figure out all these scams to get out of paying taxes like the rich do. And they're not going to go on welfare. So all this burden is put on working class people. It's just so despicable. It's so disgusting. And then landlords are like, oh, I'm going to charge you $2,000 for a crappy slum. I'm going to charge you 3,000. I'm going to charge you 6,000 in New York City for a crappy place that I'm not going to keep up. Because that's the thing too. Like landlords are not keeping up properties. Builders, developers are not building a healthy structure. It's all the cheapest products that's toxic and moldy and whatever. And then cities aren't protecting inhabitants. They're like, oh, put up your 5G towers. Oh, spray your Monsanto Roundup stuff that causes cancer and kills your microbiome. Oh, put fluoride and graphene oxide in the water and the air. So it's like, and then people blame working class people for not wanting to do a terrible job. So there's no place for a working class person to live. If the working class person happens to be able to afford that rent, it's like a poisonous place, and the city itself is poisoning the people, and they're trying to indoctrinate the working class person's little kid to become trans or gay and get sex change operations. Like, why? Why would a working class person want to be in your city? They're basically donating their life force energy to pay everything for rent or property taxes, and then they're donating their children to you for your satanic propaganda. Like, why would a sane working class person want to be in your city when you're doing this kind of thing? When school boards are putting child porn stuff in the library, but they won't allow parents to read the child porn that's being shoved down children's throats at their library, at the school board meetings. I mean, there's so many videos of parents reading the child porn that's put in the child's library, but the school board shuts that parent down. They send security to stop the parent from reading the porn book that the school board is forcing into the children's library. Like when a little kid sees something kind of like that, like they're going to be curious, and it's very powerful. It's very, impressionable. Children are impressionable, especially with something like that. And this like sordid satanic occult kind of thing. And that's the thing. What the school boards are doing and these city councils are doing, like they're putting in satanic stuff, occult stuff, whether it's food, air, water, so-called medical stuff, certain decisions, life or death, kill people for high statistics, get as many children into that sex change program, because it's a growth industry. And so you have like mental illness is a growth industry, homelessness is a growth industry, illegals are a growth industry, like NGOs are a growth industry. So these are the growth industries. 2024, all the respectable people are into this growth industry. And I'm saying conservatives. I'm blaming the conservatives as well, because liberals are smoking dope and having sex and doing their sex change operations or something like that. They're and so, some of them are in the government, in the schools, and whatever. I mean, good proportion, but they haven't been active the past 40 years that the Constitution and sanity has eroded. Like conservative people have just been like, oh, I'm just going to keep my head down. I'm just going to go along, because I want to get along or something like that. And I'm not saying conservatives should have yelled or anything. I think conservatives just should have said, oh, this is not biblical. This is not right. This is immoral. And, you know, looked up precedent, did some homework. I know it's hard. I have a hard time keeping track of everything myself. But because here we are, because conservatives were asleep at the wheel. And I'm talking about, I mean, I've been in Montana, I've been in South Dakota, I've been in Virginia. Like these are not, I'm here in Arkansas, these are not hotbeds of liberality. But that, like, the liberals have infested these places, and the liberals in conservative places have this huge chip on their shoulder because they're like, well, they're overcompensating because they feel guilty that they were brought up in a Christian home. I don't know what the deal is, but when I moved from, like, I grew up in New York, lived in San Francisco, lived in Portland, Oregon, and then I moved to Montana. And the liberals there were like, they were ignorant liberals because they had no experience with everything that they were fighting for. They didn't have good buddies who were any of the isms that that come to mind, or the phobias or the whatever, even environmentalism. Like, so they were just dogmatic without really having looked into it. When I lived in Oregon, one of my friends was a environmental activist, and she pointed out that because she looked into solar stuff, because she was like, oh, solar is a good idea. But she looked into it and she told me, and this was like in 2004, that these minerals that are harvested for electric vehicles, solar panels, it's done with slave labor, child slave labor, where the children are like, they don't have, when you're using child slave labor, you're just like, they're just have the most primitive tools, and it's little children. I mean, but Germany built its whole solar, environmentalist, um, electric vehicle thing on the backs of child slave labor in Africa. So, but nobody cares. Liberals do not care. Liberals are like, I'm still going to get my electric vehicle, even though little children were getting your clods of minerals for your battery that's going to blow up, that's not going to decompose, your solar panel, your windmill, that's this huge problem to deal with after they stop working after a few years. but liberals are, they're very short-sighted. They're like, oh, I'm taking care of the earth, when the very thing that they're doing is like it's a bigger burden than what we had before. So anyway, I it just dawned on me that I think over time, I think poverty is actually engineered. I think the challenges and stuff, the high cost of living, I think it's engineered, and I think it's a way of controlling regular people, and it's making them so caught up in survival, so they don't have time to think. So they don't even take the time to think. So they're so stressed that when they have a little moment, they're just going to go get drunk or do drugs or do other self-destructive coping mechanisms. Because if things were okay, if it was like a Belle Epoque where people could work enough, pay their bills, and then go enjoy going to a little restaurant, go to the beach, go, like had time to take the train, to go do a little journey, like who gets that life? That's rich people or very entitled people who know how to manipulate the system. So I think this like our humanity and our lives are being taken hostage by whoever's in charge of this system. Um, you know, like whoever's in charge, I'm thinking who sets the wages and who sets the rent and the housing prices and cost of utilities and food and stuff like that. Because if you're in other countries, like the cost of food, the cost of housing, the cost of clothing, it's a different price. Cost of gas. So even despite there being a lot of other people, so yeah, and I think I mean Satan is ruler of the earth at this for this little time. So of course, it's a demonic, satanic situation we're in. And yeah, it's sad, and I can't wait for Jesus to return and fix things. But I think, of course, prayer helps, but don't let the satanic agenda ruin your life, steal all of your life. Like, try to reclaim, your existence, because it's yours. And like stop like spending all of your money or all of your time and all of your attention on stupid stuff that doesn't matter, that where people don't care about you, or where they can't even care about you, like people online and stuff like that. Like, I think it's interesting to read comments, and I'm grateful for when I get to interact with viewers, of my little videos and stuff like that. I know that it's usually it's either the Google AI bot or censorship people are probably the only people really making it this far in my videos. And I'm glad for that, attention and to be heard. I know they're just like, what kind of wrong thing is she saying? It's just Big Brother looking for a landmine of something problematic to flag. But even so, but yeah, I think we need to, just reassess what our priorities are. And I think we would realize it's not makeup, and it's not a fancy car, and it's not multiple income streams. And I think it's important to people to pay your rent and bills and mortgage and all that stuff. Um, but and that's why I think a lot of people are moving away, like they're moving out to the country and stuff like that, or out of the country. And I notice YouTubers, like influential folks, were bashing working class people, like people don't want to work. No, they just moved away because they can't afford to live where you live. Like people who are YouTubers and they've lived somewhere a long time, or they're making a good living, so they can pay $2,000 in rent, or their mortgage is much more affordable. It's a few hundred a month, or 500 or whatever. But a regular working person who's paying rent is paying $2,000 a month working at a $10 an hour job that might be only 20 hours a week. So, and then that person has to pay for a car. They have to get that second job. They have to commute to the two jobs. I mean, it's crazy. So I'm glad to see that YouTuber influencers aren't bashing working class people, trying to imply that they're not that they don't want to work. I don't think it's the case. And like the nerve of the YouTuber influencers bashing people not working, at the Dunkin' Donuts in 100-degree heat making stupid food. I mean, I think people who work at donut shops are actually very important. Coffee shops, gas stations. I think it's not great food, perhaps, but it's so vital. Like they keep civilization going. Like all the head honchos of the WEF or Trudeau or Biden, if they disappeared, nobody would care. It wouldn't matter. Like we would still get the gas. We would still buy our chips and get Mexican food or a soda or something like that, or go to our health food store. But those are irrelevant. Like CEOs, BlackRock, Vanguard, if they all disappeared, they're irrelevant. The rest of us, we would just be plugging along, doing better, probably. I mean, BlackRock is saying they had to force behaviors. They have to and these are like straight heterosexual Caucasian people who are saying, yeah, we got to force behaviors, we got to force this trans agenda. Like they're not doing it to their kids. They're not. It's not. They're not transvestites, but they're trying to force everybody else under their command. I mean, it's just so insane. It's so crazy. Um, so yeah, I think you just got to figure out what's your unique situation, what's your priority. You know, is it getting more out in nature? Is it spending more time with your friends? Is it having some downtime writing in a journal or playing music or listening to music or something? Like having conversation with God, praying, hearing what God wants to say to you. I think now's better. Now's a good time. It's always a good time to figure that kind of stuff out. And I know it's hard. It's in this time of too much information and programmed overconsumption, and like this hole in the heart of anxiety, like not being able to stand the silence when solitary, when you have a moment. I understand that's hard to cope with. But I was listening to this audiobook and they were saying that being bored and idle time, like having some idle time, allows for reflection. And I would say that allows for wisdom. And that we have to have some calmness and peace in order for us to have intelligence, to be able to recall, to be able to remember information. Like when I've had jobs, I've been so stressed, like at the training. I'm like, it was so stressful to just wake up on time, get there on time, and do the commute on the bus and find the location and stuff like that. So when I'd be getting trained, I'm like, I was out of my mind. I could not remember a thing because my life was so stressful, and, just barely living hand to mouth, barely able to pay bills and rent, and couldn't buy food that was nourishing. So I was just like living off of like dried split pea soup and dried black bean soup and stuff like that, toast and butter and stuff like that. And like, how is somebody supposed to function optimally? But you're supposed to figure that out. Somehow you're supposed to like live on $1,000, you know, even working full time, and everything's going to rent and food, and not even good enough food. And somehow employees are supposed to like function like that's what I found so difficult with employers, is they were expecting like optimal, like machine like, robot like capacity, but getting paid so little. And then when you asked for rent, I mean, when you asked for, a raise, it would be like some sort of weird mind game. And the thing is, like, there were coworkers who were paid like double what I paid, but they didn't even have the skills that I had, or people were paid more than I made, and it was like their first few months working at a job at all, and I had like 10 years experience. And I think maybe it was like sexism because these were both guys, but yeah, it's just like this um, messed up world, I guess is the point. And it's just even more messed up than what you might have thought. So I'm just figuring it out as I go and just wanted to share. Thanks for watching. God bless.